Thank you, Mr. Chair. In 2016, foreign investment in Canada fell by 42% overall, and again by 27% last year. U.S. investment in Canada decreased by half, while Canadian investment in the U.S. is up 2/3 since the Liberals were elected. Brett Wilson, Canoe Financial Chairman and co-founder of First Energy, said, quote, "Americans aren't investing here because they've got a choice of tax rates. You can pay 30, 40, 45% in Canada or 20, 21% in the U.S. You're not going to come to Canada by choice," Brett says. How can Canada possibly compete with the United States, which is cutting taxes and red tape, while the Liberals are doing the exact opposite in Canada?
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, the member opposite brings up an important point. We always need to be listening to make sure that we maintain our competitive edge. I will say that we are competitive today. We've shown that level of competitiveness through our ability to grow at the fastest pace among G7 countries. What we know to be true is that this is having positive results on Canadian families. We're getting more people working, which is, of course, supporting our business sector. We're seeing wages go up. We're actually seeing wage growth, a sign of a positive situation for Canadians. Now, Mr. Speaker, we realize that changes in the global economy, changes in trading opportunities are important for us to consider. We're working hard to deal with NAFTA and find a way to get to what we hope will be a better situation. We also are ensuring that our tax rate is staying competitive by looking at where the U.S. is today versus where they were yesterday and how businesses can compete. This is an ongoing exercise, and we will certainly have more results to share in future.
The Honourable Member for Lakeland.
But, Mr. Chair, the consensus of economists, experts, investment firms, and private sector proponents is that Canada is getting obliterated in terms of its competitiveness. Even last week, the president of ATCO said governments in Canada are busy bringing in multiple and compounding policies and regulations that are, quote, layering considerable costs on businesses and individuals alike, undermining the confidence of investors, eroding the attractiveness of our industries, and weakening the confidence of the public. It goes without saying that in our increasingly globalized economy, capital flows will continue to seek certainty. In 2016, the energy sector accounted for approximately 10% of Canada's GDP, but the Bank of Canada predicts new energy investment in Canada will decline in 2018 and then drop to zero the next year. Given the importance of energy investment to the Canadian economy, does it concern the Finance Minister that Canadian energy investment is dropping dramatically, which is a fact, and specifically what measures in the federal budget will stop energy investment from leaving Canada?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, we will continue to work towards ensuring that Canada is a competitive place to do business. We have now today a situation where our tax rates for small and medium-sized business are the lowest among G7 countries, significantly lower than we see in other countries. We know that the U.S. changes in tax rates create a different situation in competitiveness than was the case prior to those changes. That said, we still have a competitive tax environment, one that we are examining to make sure that we get it right and have the opportunity for businesses in the future. We know that our positive results have put us in a position so that we can consider those changes from a position of strength. What we will not do is move forward without doing appropriate analysis and without listening to Canadians to make sure that we get this right. That is the approach that we're taking. We're listening. We will ensure that that competitiveness that we have had for so long continues.
The Honourable Member for Lakeland.
Well, Mr. Chair, speaking of analysis, earlier tonight the Finance Minister said the purpose of this budget is to help the economy work well. The fact is that more than 100,000 energy workers have lost their jobs under his watch since 2015. And according to economist Trevor Tombe, young people, especially 55% of Canadian males between the ages of 15 and 24, have been disproportionately impacted and unemployed as of April 2018. Given the Finance Minister's emphasis on his budget's gender-based analysis, what does he say to the young men in Lakeland and across Alberta and in the energy sector across Canada who are struggling to make ends meet?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, we are continuing in our efforts to ensure that Canadians across the country in all sectors find themselves with successful opportunities for the future. This, we know, in the oil and gas sector has been a challenging time. We had a significant change in oil prices during the course of 2015 through until recently, where oil prices have started to climb. But the challenge remains. We know, however, that from an employment situation, we are in the best situation we've been in since about 1976, at 5.8% unemployment. We will continue to work. There's always more to be done, but that is a very positive situation, better than was in the case for the entire time during the previous government.
The honourable member for Lakeland.
But in fact, more energy investment has left Canada under these Liberals than in any other two-year time period in 70 years, more than half a century. And the collateral damage of that is hundreds of thousands of Canadians out of work and job losses rippling throughout other sectors. But you know what would create jobs, Mr. Speaker, in the energy, or Mr. Chair, in the energy sector? Pipelines. And Trans Mountain was approved in the national interest a year and a half ago, but there's chaos and uncertainty around pipelines in Canada right now. The deadline for the Trans Mountain expansion is 9 days and 7 sitting days away. And it's important for government budgets because the Conference Board of Canada estimates Trans Mountain construction and first 20 years of expanded operations will deliver $46.7 billion in provincial and federal government revenue. Wow. So, but the messages from this government have been all over the place since April 8th. The Prime Minister, the Finance Minister, the Natural Resources Minister all promised legislation on the Trans Mountain expansion. I'm hoping the Finance Minister can provide clarity tonight. On May 16th, he said the federal government is, quote, willing to indemnify the Trans Mountain expansion against unnecessary delays that are politically motivated. Will the Finance Minister bring forward another piece of legislation or revised budget estimates to account for expenditures on or indemnification of the Trans Mountain expansion?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to acknowledge the importance of the Trans Mountain expansion project, a project that we see as in the national interest of Canada. I'd like to acknowledge that we have moved forward with federal approval of this project that was followed up by provincial approval. We've moved forward with a robust environmental assessment process that's led to a significant investment in oceans protection. We see this as in the national interest. We've been clear that we're seeking a financial approach to ensure this project gets done. I have a level of confidence that that will happen. I'm in discussions today, and I'm not at the position where I'm able to provide more color on those discussions. Suffice it to say that we believe that this can be done in a commercially appropriate way, and we'll be able to do something that the previous government wasn't able to do in 10 years, and that is actually get an approval and a construction of a pipeline that will allow us to move our resources to international markets.
The Honourable Member for Lakeland.
Kinder Morgan has already invested $1 billion in the Trans Mountain expansion and estimates it's lost $200 million a month for every month of delay. Can the Finance Minister at least ask, will the indemnification be retroactive?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I can reiterate the fact that we see this project as commercially viable. We see it in Canada's national interest. We see it creating 15,000 jobs. We will provide more information as more information is available on that subject.
The Honourable Member for Lakeland.
There's no question that the project is commercially viable. That's why Kinder Morgan has been willing to invest billions upon billions of dollars into completing the expansion that they initiated. And, you know, the reality is that the Finance Minister earlier tonight said indemnification is something regular in business transactions. But, of course, it hasn't been regular, standard, or required to build pipelines in Canada until these Liberals destroying the energy sector and now claiming that the only possible solution to get an expansion that's already been approved is either a direct equity stake, putting taxpayers on the hook, or investing pension funds or some sort of insurance or backstop, which he continues to refuse to be accountable and transparent to Canadians about. So can the minister at least answer who will pay? Does he expect that taxpayers will foot the bill for a direct equity stake in Trans Mountain, or will the minister gamble pension funds, or both of those?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, this project is in the national interest. It's economically viable. It adds value to the shippers of product. It creates 15,000 jobs. We see the project as one that has commercial value. That's why I'm in discussions in order to ensure that this project moves forward and is not in any way impeded by the delays and uncertainty caused by Premier Horgan. because we think that that would not be in our national interest.
The honourable member for Lakeland.
Of course, it's already been severely obstructed and impeded by multiple delays and roadblocks from opponents, and the Prime Minister, the Finance Minister have sat on their hands for a year and a half since the approval. Can the Finance Minister at least give some clarity around why there are mixed messages coming from his ministers? So last week he said whatever their plans are, which he still won't divulge, sort of like the carbon tax cover-up, that it won't cost taxpayers a thing. But a couple of days after that, the Infrastructure Minister indicated, of course, it will cost taxpayers. Canadians just don't know what those costs will be after there is a deal. And of course, Kinder Morgan says there's still no deal.
The honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, we believe this project needs to go forward. We've given federal approval. We've ensured that we've protected our oceans with a best-in-class $1.5 billion oceans protection approach that we know will ensure that we are environmentally appropriate as we embark on this important expansion project. We are in discussions to ensure that the delays and uncertainties caused by Premier Horgan are not precluding the proponent or private sector approach from moving forward. That, we believe, is an appropriate way to responsibly move forward in a commercially viable approach.
The honourable member for Lakeland.
I think what's also concerning is the Finance Minister made a comment that a senior finance official made a comment that the Finance Minister's announcement of possible indemnification or taxpayers' dollars being sunk into the Trans Mountain Pipeline, although he still won't answer any of the questions, was a so-called test to test Kinder Morgan's commitment to their expansion. I'd say that's a pretty high-stakes game of poker to play with the livelihoods of hundreds of thousands of Canadians. The CEO of the Surrey Board of Trade says it continues to support the Trans Mountain expansion, the 15,000 jobs it will create, mostly in the trades, but they say, however, quote, the Canadian government should not be using taxpayer money to compensate for project delays and to indemnify financial losses. So again, can the minister confirm whether or not they will be bringing forward legislation to assure the Trans Mountain expansion will go ahead, and if they even have a ballpark at all about what this might cost taxpayers?
The honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I can confirm the importance of this project. I can confirm that we believe creating jobs for 15,000 people is the right thing to do. I can confirm that ensuring that our natural resources have the access to international markets that will allow us to get prices that are more appropriate for those resources is important. I can confirm that we are in discussions with the project proponent, and I can confirm that we are looking to find a way to ensure that there is a private sector, commercially appropriate way to move forward with this project.
Honourable member for Lakeland.
But Kinder Morgan's response to the Finance Minister's announcement was that they are not yet in alignment, which means this scheme that the Finance Minister is cooking up with 9 days left is not actually the answer for Kinder Morgan, because of course the problem was never money. The problem is clarity, certainty, and being able to move ahead when a federal project has been approved under the highest standards, most stringent regulatory regime in the world. And the federal Liberals should not have hesitated. They should have acted on asserting federal jurisdiction and assuring that the rule of law applies. So then the Finance Minister has made some sort of vague references to other potential investors or company or groups of companies that they would also indemnify if the colossal loss of Kinder Morgan abandoning the Trans Mountain Pipeline would happen. Can the minister name any investor or investors or group of companies that are interested in taking over the Trans Mountain expansion if Kinder Morgan abandons it as a result of the failure of their leadership?
The honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Chair, I can appreciate that the member opposite her party, knowing that they've been unsuccessful for a decade in getting a pipeline built to take our resources to international markets, that they probably feel anxious. They recognize that their lack of success creates a level of anxiety because they can see that the resolve of this government to get this done is clear, not only in our words, but we will show through our actions. What we're going to do is ensure that we actually deliver on a promise to Canadians, that a project in the national interest that will get done. We are sorry that we're creating anxiety for them because of their previous failure, but our success will highlight that there is a way to do this, and it's our way.